Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from vacation still, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we're looking at play-up props here for Game 4 in this Eastern Conference Finals series. Obviously, the C's are down 3-0, but we'll look at what we like in this one for play-up props. We also have the best bets video up for this one, so make sure to like and subscribe to that page and continue to follow along throughout the rest of this postseason. Also want you to head to thelines.com, check out all the great written content we're putting up on the site, and use that odds finder tool that we have for you guys. A nice little chart to see all the odds available to you right there from all the books that are giving us bets this postseason. Quick look at some of the play-up props that we did pretty well in the Game 3 massacre that we saw between these two teams. We went 3-1, as I mentioned in that best bets video. Also had a decent night, 2-2, but we're still up some plus units on that final Game 4 in the Lakers-Nuggets series for these player props. So still feeling really good, up plus units throughout the postseason here. And let's jump right into your first NBA play-up prop, Nate.
Picking up where we left off in best bets, where Josh said, let's just take Caleb Martin to get 12 points or 19 points, rebounds, assists. I kind of prefer the PRA because I think the minutes are just taken off. He played 35 in Game 3. He was a plus 34, got you 15, 4, and 3. Kevin Love, just 5 minutes, right, as the starter. It looks like he hurt his ankle, and he's just not going to be in the rotation really anymore. So it's Caleb at the 4, mixing in with Max Strus a little bit, but he's just been so integral to what Miami does this series. I mean, these playoffs and really just exemplifies their attitude, which is just worlds away from Boston in terms of just competing with everything they have. Every possession matters so much. The 50-50 balls, attacking the rim. He's shooting 85% inside the arc in the series, averaging 19 points, about 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists. His usage continues to climb a little bit, much more than it was in that Knicks series where he only had a 16% usage. But against the Bucks, he was also very effective, and the Bucks and Celtics are much more similar. I'll come back to 2 home games, 12 points per game, 10.5 boards for Caleb against the Bucks. I think the boards will continue to bounce his way a little bit more here, especially if Boston continues to throw up bricks. They shot 6 for 29 from 3 in the first 3 quarters there. So that got him the 4 rebounds. He could get more. It's been a prop we've hit every single game this series, and I'm not shying away from it here. That's why it's the first one on the list.
Yeah, let's keep going with add the rebounds and assists, like you said. That kind of covers us in the event that he has his first bad shooting game since I can remember, since the postseason started, basically. And the minutes and usage will be there. It's the reason that I felt so great about him as well when I talked about it in best bets. The points are so low. I guess the books see it as like, well, we raised it since last game because it was 10.5 last game. But it doesn't matter. Like, the numbers are what the numbers are, and just because you're afraid to raise your bets a bit more than 1 point at a time, fine, I'll just keep taking it. So I'm going to move on to Jimmy Buckets, Senior Buckets, Jay Buckets, best player in this series. Best player in the playoffs. Joker's been pretty incredible. He's up there, right? It's one of two, maybe, however you want to look at it. Devin Booker's no longer in these playoffs. Either way, Jimmy Buckets, especially the way that he just affects his team. I'm looking at him for rebounds in this one, Nate, and I just like the juice that I'm getting on it for 7.5 boards. I'm actually putting a unit and a half on it. I'm looking at some elimination and clinching games numbers for Jimmy Buckets to talk about this, which is also why I would consider 30 plus points for him. I don't think it's worth more than half a unit because his points prop is at 27.5. And so I'm going to take 30 for better juice, but it's not great. It's only like plus 110 still. So or plus 125 even on FanDuel. But the point here is I'm focused on the rebounds, and that's what I think I'm definitely going to throw more on. His last 7, I'm looking at elimination or clinching games, right? So far in this postseason, he's had 4 of those because I'm counting the play-in tournament as eliminate. 1 was a potential clincher. 1 was an elimination or potential clincher. And then he's had a couple of those, obviously, in the last 2 series. And then I'm actually even going back to Boston and last year's playoffs as well with those series where he had a couple of potential clinching games. 38 points per game in those last 7, which is 2 versus Boston from last year in the conference finals, 1 versus Philly, 1 versus Atlanta. Then you got Atlanta this year, Chicago this year, Milwaukee, New York, right? So looking at all those games, that's 38 points per game against those teams in this situation with 8.7 boards. And that's what I'm focused on, is that he's got like 9 boards, 9 boards, 8 boards, 10 boards. The only 2 games that he failed to get 8 boards in this situation was against Atlanta when they lost, and against Chicago where they won, but he was focused on scoring, only had 5 rebounds in that game. So everywhere else, he's getting the 8 rebounds. I think that the books might be failing to take into consideration that Kevin Love is not even going to be out there for the 16 to 20 minutes that he has been out there at this point, if his ankle really is bothering him enough that they did not bring him in after it got hurt in game 3. That's 1 fewer rebounders out there for 20 minutes worth of time. Caleb Martin is an all-world rebounder. Love him. But after that, guys are good at rebounding for their positions on the Heat, but Jimmy Butler is the second best overall rebounder now on the team, no matter what. And when Bam's off the floor, which is not very often, but when he is, he's the best rebounder on the floor. And so I got to believe that he's good for 8 boards in this one. I don't even have to juke this up to him getting a double-double or 10 boards or anything like that. I can just leave it at the 8 and I still get plus 115 on DraftKings for him to do that. So he's gotten 8 boards in 5 of his last 7 against Boston. That includes the last 2 playoff games last year, which were both elimination games for him. He had to win game 6 and then game 7. And then, the usage rate in that time, over 41 minutes, is about 30% as well. So all these things add up to I think this is mispriced, to be honest, with plus odds for him to get over 7.5. If it was 8.5 at plus 115, I would understand. And then it would make me feel like it was a little bit of a conundrum. But as it stands, I'm very, very happy to take the over here.
I guess it's mispriced along with the line indicating that Miami's going to have to win a close game. If Miami gets into a close game, I do expect Jimmy to step up and score down the stretch. But otherwise, I feel more emboldened about taking his under last game. He was basically like a cheerleader in game 3 and just look at my guys, and just out there just playing some defense, passing it off a little bit, chilling. This is not the end of the Bucks series where he dropped 56 in an otherworldly performance, and where I agreed with you. I looked at his elimination clinching stats and was yeah, he's gonna get huge numbers here. This is a team that has laid down, and I don't necessarily see Jimmy having to step up against an opponent that's no longer fighting. So I'm scared to take any of his overs. I would look at the under 27.5 again, but only if you have some confidence in Boston, then yeah, you could take the Jimmy overs.
Well, I would just briefly mention that he got 8 boards in his time in this last game where he didn't play the fourth quarter. He got the 8 rebounds in that one because Love was no longer in there, right? So I think he could still get the boards at least, even if this thing's a blowout.
Yeah, to be clear, I mean, rebounds, assists are fine for me, but I think the points, his usage might be lower than you expected to see because of what we saw in game 3. So the Celtics were trying to find somebody to target here, and it's definitely not going to be the Stars, who have just been terrible lately. So is Malcolm Brogdon, and that's why he was basically benched in game 3. So I'm going with Derrick White again. 12.5 points and assists, which gets you minus 120. And then I would put a quarter of a unit on him to hit 3 threes, which he's done in all 3 this series. And that's plus 130. So nice payout if he's able to get that. In game 2, he had 3 threes in the first half and basically got his points prop right away. His minutes have been rising while Brogdon's have been falling. Brogdon went 0 for 6, 0 points in game 3. I do expect him to bounce back a little bit, but that definitely indicates Miami has his number to a degree. I mean, they've limited him since game 1. He's not getting to the rim like he does against other teams. And White is shooting the ball much better than he was last playoffs. He's shooting the ball at 47% from 3 on the road these playoffs, getting 29 minutes per game. So Mazzulla should give him more run here. And he should also call some plays for him, right? I mean, it's the thing, he's being guarded by Duncan Robinson, and they're just having him wait in the corner while Jaylen Brown puts up some terrible shot. It's what are we doing here? Attack the weakest link. And Miami, if they're going to put Duncan Robinson out there in the second quarter, D. White's got to see some more usage. He's one of the few guys giving a lot of effort on the defensive end, too. 2 blocks in the last 2 games, so he's earned more playing time. I believe, and I think he's one of the guys they can actually use to exploit Miami on the other end.
Yeah, it makes sense. I was looking at Mr. White as well because of the fact that his numbers have also his props have lowered. They've dwindled a bunch, right? As he hasn't had like the best series, but I think it's gotten to the point where they've gotten low enough that we should feel good about them. And mea culpa to everybody here, and my deepest apologies for not realizing that was the case with Aaron Gordon last game. It's one of those betting things where like you watch things happen enough, you watch a player's props drop as his numbers drop, and then once they drop far enough, you kind of go, wait a second, this is absurd. Now let me go to the inverse here because it's just the EV is just all the way on the other side now, right? So I think that's definitely what we found with Derrick White. And the only reason that I didn't take him is because I wanted to look a little sleuthy for a minute with my last pick and talk about the Williams brothers, specifically Grant. That's the bet that I definitely prefer in this situation is Mr. Grant Williams here to go over 4.5 points. The only book that was offering me a bet for Mr. Grant Williams was BetMGM, and it's 4.5 points at even money for him to get 5. So I'll take over in that because the only reason he didn't get 5 points in game 1 was that he didn't play. In games 2 and 3, Coach Joe, second row Joe, as I've been calling him because I thought it's pretty funny. Like, man, I don't know what he's doing. You kind of called it out. Like I'm glad that he's playing Grant Williams. That seems to be the thing we can all agree upon is that Grant Williams should be in there. And was like you called him earlier when we were talking offline here, like won them the Bucks series, and then he just can't seem to get back on the floor in the postseason with Joe Mazzulla as the head coach. But I think he realized that now. He played 26 and then 29 minutes in games 2 and 3. Rob Will, I would love to take at 7.5 points as well. He's gotten that in all 3 games, including game 1 where he only played 13. But I don't know that I want to have to the possibility that he plays 15 minutes again or less is still there. And so if that's going to be the case, then like I can't feel comfortable that, I need him to get 8 quick points in like the first half and then not see the second half did Rob Will in game 1. Like I just don't know what Mazzulla's doing with Rob Will. I feel like I know that Grant Williams is going to be on the floor in part because he's a teacher's pet who like probably just sucks up to Mazzulla. And he's a good like energy guy. Like I get it. I talk trash on him because he annoys me like a goody two shoes would. But Grant Williams is like a good dude who at least like gives a shit, and that he will. So he'll be on the floor even if this turns into a blowout for the Heat. Like I think Grant Williams is one of the guys that Mazzulla at this point knows will be giving him effort. So if he's going to get 25 to 30 minutes, I like him to get 5 points in the 2 and 3 when he averaged 27 minutes per game in those 2 games. He got 10.5 points per game, and he averaged 6.5 field goal attempts, 7 one game, 6 the other. So if he's going to shoot the ball 6 to 7 times, he's going to get 5 points, man. From where he's shooting as well, a couple open threes, and then getting a couple of things down low when he uses that big booty to get to the rim.
Yeah, this is a good find for sure. And I agree, Grant is one of the only guys he clearly tried to just fire his team up when he was talking to Jimmy, getting in his face, and then he tried to back it up by being aggressive. And I think we forget that he was an elite scorer in college. Like he can get it going down low against smaller teams. Miami is not the biggest team. He just has to be aggressive. And both these Williams overs are a good way to fade Al Horford, who I was looking at, but his props are so low already after he goes 8-1-1. But he just can't play against Bam right now. I mean, he basically lost them game 2 because he was getting owned down low. And so I think the one thing we do know is Mazzulla is going to have to switch that up and go with some younger, faster guys to deal with Bam, who's the new wave of center, and Horford's just not able to match up with him.
Yeah. No, yeah, poor Al. But I mean, even like Jaylen Brown got the business from Bam as well, who we have not talked about enough, probably is not getting enough national recognition as the clear-cut second-best player on this team that does at least a little bit of everything and a lot of some stuff. So, yeah, like, shout out Bam. I tried to take his points and rebounds. Another poor moment to take them, to be honest, after his props just kept rising. The inverse of everything I was just saying. It was, like, not the moment for him. He would have probably been fine if he needed to play at all in the fourth or anything like that, but Game 3 just wasn't a game, so I would be afraid to take Bam's props again, and the same with Papa Al. So I think, like you said, I'm happy to inherently fade him because of the fact that I'm believing in the Williams bros. So that's all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page and continue to follow along. We also have the best bets video from this game 4. Obviously, we were looking at some Heat winning stuff, so I don't want to say hopefully we have a game 5, but we just love some more hoop. Either way, until we see you next, happy betting.